There's been a lot of buzz around Skydance's Behemoth, the latest VR game that pits you against colossal giants and diseased cultists.
Think you're worse than a behemoth?
You want to finish that thought, buddy?
At first glance, it seems like the perfect recipe for an unforgettable experience. You've got massive enemies and immersive environments and the promise of epic battles, but by the end of this video you'll know if this game lives up to the hype or if it's just another overhyped VR title that falls short of its potential. Just a heads up though, this game is expected to receive a patch within days of this video's release. While my experience of this game is pre-patch, most of the fixes mentioned aren't related to the problems I ran into during my adventure.
Grab rope and press X to descend. We really have to stop doing this in VR.
Let's get into this review though, starting with the theme of this story-rich experience. At its core, Behemoth is a combat-focused giant-slaying RPG set in a world consumed by corruption. This plague is being spread as a result of the continued existence of these behemoths, and you're given the colossal task of delivering the cure. While the action does take center stage, the game doesn't skimp on the quality of its story. The narrative weaves you through your journey, very nicely I might add, introducing characters who play pivotal roles in how immersive this experience can be. Early on, you're aided by a cryptic old man who keeps his true identity under wraps until after your first major victory.
Call me Trapper. That fool wanted to call me Dinner. Glad you made him die hungry.
Then there's the eerie ghost lady with amnesia who haunts you as a full-time career.
Resist the curse. I can make you stronger still.
Okay.
Along with the behemoths, they shape a story that's as much about saving a world in decay as it is about your survival. But what stands out is the pacing. The game strikes a great balance between character development and storytelling, delivering just the right amount of narrative between battles. It's a smooth progression that never feels too slow or rushed. And the level design piggybacks on that, adding some serious Skyrim vibes to the experience. Not sure if that's intentional, but each area from sprawling ruins to rugged mountains feels atmospheric. Aside from a few awkwardly placed levers and obvious interactables, the environments are well crafted in a way that helps this world feel alive and uninvitingly inviting. I really wish I could say the same about the game's mechanics and combat, but we'll get into that after we touch on the audio experience. The audio in Behemoth is as impressive as you'd hope for in a game of this scale. As expected of a title being advertised as a AAA game, every sound feels deliberate and grounded, keeping you immersed in the experience. The voice acting in this game sounds very believable. As a result, the NPCs feel authentic, like real people existing in these godforsaken lands. The sound effects also play a huge role here, punching well within the AAA weight class. Whether it's the clash of metal on metal during combat, the rush of an arrow whizzing past your head, or the heavy groan of a wooden door, everything sounds exactly as it should. The stone mechanisms grind with a weighty, rough sound, while the smacking together of two wooden torches sounds exactly how you'd imagine. There's no single sound that stands out as awkward or out of place, which is no small feat for a game packed with this much action and environmental details. But as awesome as this all sounds, here's the bad news. If there's one area where Behemoth really struggles to stand tall, it's in the mechanics. For a game that heavily emphasizes combat, the actual execution here simply feels uninspired. The battles often lack the precision you'd expect from action combat, leaving many of the encounters feeling more frustrating than fun. The behemoths themselves are a highlight of this game, and the very first one was a foreshadowing of what to expect from this game going forward. The idea of climbing and slaying giants is wonderful in theory, but the execution just falls short. In the first behemoth fight, the context clues, or how the game hints you should take down the behemoth, they're vague at best. You'll completely miss the hint if you're staring at this giant you're supposed to fight, and not this part of a ship I assumed was too fragile to be useful. This wouldn't be a problem if the game was aiming for a Dark Souls approach to hints and tips, but that's clearly not the intended angle here. The AI for this behemoth also felt off. Its behavior wasn't intuitive, which detracts from the sense of facing a living giant creature. More often than that, the cultists you'll fight often go down in ways that don't feel natural. The awkward attack timings don't help either, but the recent patch is supposed to address AI gameplay and pathing. This should hopefully fix how awkward enemy movement feels. Pre-patch, the whole experience gave combat the vibe of a flat-screen game hastily adapted for virtual reality, rather than something designed from the ground up for VR. As a comparison, it's not hard to think of Skyrim VR, but without the benefits of mods to smooth out the experience. One mini-boss leading up to the second Behemoth was a prime example of my experience with the combat, and I'm not entirely convinced it's just the AI. This enemy used a wide area attack with a dark warning area that blended into the dark environment, making it nearly impossible to see if you were hiding under a bridge to avoid an attack from above. To make matters worse, this attack from above ignored cover, but that's not even the worst part. Later in the fight, he glitched and turned invisible, but not his health bar, which, combined with this game's great audio design, became the only reliable way to fight him. Throw in the fact that the fight felt uninspired before he bugged out, and the whole experience felt more like exploiting a glitch than an actual challenging fight. One mechanic the game leans heavily on though is the grappling hook, which you get early on. While the grappling hook itself adds a fun layer of traversal and puzzle solving to the game, the controls for it are anything but intuitive. The problem here is that very little about actually using this thing feels natural. Then you have the strength enhancing skill tied to the core gameplay that is far too easy to activate by accident. Many of the controls just feel awkward for a VR game, with the exception of actual movement. But to this game's credit, climbing without the grappling hook is some of the best I've seen in VR to date. Overall though, Behemoth's mechanics fall short of my expectations for a game being marketed as a AAA title. Things do start looking up again though when it comes to the graphics. The visuals are one of the game's better aspects, but it's not without its own problems. For the most part, the game delivers on the look of a dark and doomed world, with environments that feel rich with decay and heavy atmosphere. Surfaces and textures look good overall, but there are noticeable discrepancies in resolution. Some areas are rendered in crisp, high detail, while others feel oddly low quality by comparison, creating an uneven visual experience, but only if you look closely. To be fair, most people won't mind, and by default the game sets most graphical settings to ultra, which is a testament to its visual ambition. For consistency in my reviews though, I always dial these settings back to high, and even with this adjustment, the game still looks relatively good. However, performance remains an issue. I ran into some stuttering and frame drops similar to what I experienced in Ghost of Tabor. These hiccups can be immersion breaking, especially during moments that are supposed to enhance immersion, like busting down a wall with your bare hands. Oddly enough, something that stood out for the wrong reasons was how torches work. Picking one up causes it to automatically ignite, which is fine, I don't hate that. But if you're holding two torches, only the first one you grabbed will light up, which feels a bit odd. Also, throwing a torch extinguishes it automatically, which was awkward when I tried throwing it for a better look into the darkness. To add to that, you can't spread the fire by touching two torches together. While I can agree that this is a bit nitpicky, it's the finer details like this that make Skydance's Behemoth feel more like a flat screen port than a game developed for VR. But comfort is the foundation for any VR experience, because without it, even the best games can make you sick.
I'm actually holding all the buttons down, and my hand is doing this.
And in the worst case scenarios, bad comfort design can make a VR game unplayable. That said, the options menu in Behemoth is functional, if not particularly impressive. At this point, you might be thinking that the second half of this video has been straight up bashing this game, but that's not my intention. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. As for the options menu, it has a decent amount of settings designed to smooth out your VR experience. The option to play seated or standing is included here, and if you're prone to motion sickness, this option can definitely help. Features like this vignette slider can help make the adjustment process more manageable, which is always a welcome addition for the gyroscopically challenged amongst us. You can also toggle camera shake on or off, which I appreciated, especially for recording smoother gameplay footage, because if you think this footage is rough, you should have seen this video before editing. On the audio side, the game offers the expected sliders, which is great because the default audio levels in games are often less than ideal. Being able to turn down background music, at least for me, is a quality of life feature. Then we have the graphical settings, which provide plenty of headroom for tweaking performance versus quality. Graphically speaking, the pixel density slider in particular is a standout option. It's not something you often see, and it's nice to have this level of control over how dense your pixels are. But now that we've dissected each piece of this behemoth of a game, let's talk about the big picture, namely how immersive this game is overall. If you've been wondering how Skydance's Behemoth actually stacks up to other VR games, I've got a score for you, but first let's score each aspect of the game. The theme of the game earns a perfect 6 out of 6. It's rich, engaging, and supported by excellent pacing and world building. The audio is another standout feature here, also earning a 6 out of 6. From the authentic voice acting to the masterfully immersive sound effects, everything feels deliberate and immersive. Unfortunately, the mechanics tell a different story, scoring just a 2 out of 6. Combat, which should have been at the heart of this game, feels clunky and uninspired due to poor enemy AI, unintuitive controls, and frustrating design choices in general. The graphics earns a respectable 4 out of 6. While the visuals are atmospheric and well crafted, the performance issues can detract from the experience. Options scores a 4 out of 6 as well. While the menu covers the basics with comfort settings, audio tweaks, and even a pixel density slider, it doesn't go above and beyond in ways I'd expect for a game this hyped. When you add it all up, giving these categories a chance to complement each other, Behemoth's overall immersion score lands at a 3 out of 6. The game shines in areas that matter, but completely drops the ball in areas that matter the most for this VR title. While it offers a glimpse of what could have been an epic experience, the rough edges keep it from reaching the heights it aims for, but that could improve with future updates. If you're still curious about facing off against these giants, Behemoth might be worth a look. Let me know in the comments if this is a game you're planning to pick up. But until next time, obligatory like and subscribe, and stay immersed.
Alright, get ready some of this Captain America, you ready? Oh, that was anticlimactic.